Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for the 15th of March, 2024. I am Aaron McHale, moderating today. Joining us, we have Quinn Pam, Ralph Kohler, Simon Helston, and Scott. And yeah, Ralph's going to kick off the discussion with the issue that he's sharing on the screen now. So over to Ralph.
I'm muted. Okay.
Yeah, you are.
Issue number is 3043330. Reduce the number of field blocks created for entities possibly to 0. That issue got already committed, but in one of the last comments before it got committed, quite one already commented and noted that she has certain problems understanding basically the interface changes, the label and the description. Based on the label and the description, she has issues understanding what actually is meant, and she already recommended asking the UX folks. And I've agreed and I've spent a bit of time trying to understand the actual functionality underneath. For comprehension, the changelog, I also paste the link in the chat, helps. But I asked for clarification over in the blog content channel yesterday, basically to outline the functionality that I'll open in a new window. That doesn't help much. To illustrate the functionality is basically the following. I've extended, basically added a few more fields to the article content type as well as the basic page. And in addition to that, I've activated layout builder for article content type as well as the basic page. As you can see, if you go now to, and on the account settings at the moment, layout builder is deactivated. And if you go to close this again, a layout for the article content type and add a block, then you see basically the content fields are based. Oops, I have to take a look. Of course, I wanted to start. Where is it? Basically, the setting is added to content authoring layout builder. That one I forgot to add at the moment. It's disabled. That means when disabled, only entity type bundles that have layout builder enabled will have their fields exposed. And that means in content fields, all the fields available on the article content type are shown and exposed. And if you go scroll down, you see users is not available. If we go now here and activate, again, reload, go down. As you can see now, more fields are exposed. I deactivate now layout builder again for accounts, move over and activate the functionality, meaning when enabled, the setting exposes all fields for all entity view displays. Save. That's basically the state before that commit got in. That was the behavior before. And if we go now, it's deactivated, reload, scroll down, and as you can see, still all user fields, all fields on the account entity are exposed and shown. But as you've noted, and what has to be noted, if you edit a layout, for example, for the article content type, no matter if that feature is activated or not, the basic page fields are never shown. But it has to be noted, in case the feature is activated, they are not shown, but still, there's still basically, how Adam Ramley phrased it, I have to switch. With the settings enabled, those field block plugins for those other bundles will still exist, so they are still created, but just not shown. And that is basically the underlying behavior. And the problem is, comprehension-wise, to wrap your head around just based on that description available on here is a bit challenging. Let's put it that way.
So before we go any further, just to ask, in fact, I'll just say that Thomas joined us. So welcome, Thomas. And Thomas Howe. And yeah, is everybody clear on what is going on here? Certainly, it took me a minute to wrap my head around it. Does anybody have any questions about this behavior or what's happening here?
One question. So, does expose means they are not accessible for the layout, meaning that if that somebody unchecks those boxes, previously added blocks would disappear, or is it that they are not shown in the user interface?
They are, depending on what, do you mean the fields for a layout?
Yeah.
Let's take the example of the article content type. We have basically body, a Boolean field, a comment field, image field, a phone field, and a text field. And currently everything is exposed. Let's unexpose it, disable it. And your question was basically if something is removed there, or
If fields are exposed to the layout builder and they are used there, and if then afterwards, if you revoke the revoke the exposing them, so uncheck the box and save, will they disappear from the layout, or will they be kind of there but not shown?
in that particular case, they're still shown.
I think does it only impact the list of blocks? I think it only impacts the list of blocks that you see when you go to add a new block. Is that right, Ralph?
Yes and no. It basically, it's basically about the performance and the scope of what's called field block plugins created. For directly visible, it is not much of a difference. The only difference was basically if you check everything there, then, for example, no matter the example I've taken here with the account settings, no matter if the use layout builder is activated or not, if that is checked, you will see basically
Mhm.
the available fields. Otherwise, if this one is unchecked and here in account settings is unchecked, then the list is shorter. It's just the amount of fields shown. But the real impact that issue is about is just the performance. Because if in the current state, which is basically to expose everything and create for every entity type those field block plugins, it's a performance track.
And in the chat, Scott says expose all fields equals provide fields to be placed in a layout.
Yeah, the phrasing's awkward. That's the first piece of that. I also, may I actually say, I think it's strange to also have a line talking about performance of this because it's an in-min form. Like, yes, it takes more to create the list of fields and place them, but it is an in-min form. It is for editing and layout content. It's a piece of information that makes somebody worry about something that I don't think they should need to worry about. As that goes. The other thing if I'll go on, the one other thing that's really kind of weird is that this form, I'm not actually sure. Yeah, I'm not actually sure. I know about layers, of course. I'm not actually sure about this specific form when it was added to like actually released, I guess. But in general, it's weird to have this separate form in a different place rather than on the content type when you're enabling the layout for a specific entity. And then, you know, it would make more sense if it was on each entity that you were actually specifying rather than a global option, because there might be another entity where you want to use your fields. Right, so you're cutting out everything across the board, but situationally there might be another content type where you want.
Just one word about that issue got committed maybe a week ago and is destined for 10.3, so it is not in a public release yet. In regards of your second point, to provide that configuration on every content type, I'm not sure if it would be too granular and against the basic paradigm that this issue is about. Not sure. And it would maybe also overcomplicate things even more, because with, for example, the unchecked state, you already have that behavior you outline that you can decide on a per content type basis if something is exposed or not. And therefore, I think it is okay. My bigger gripe is basically the form the control is exposed to the user or presented with a checkbox. It's sort of suboptimal to wrap your head around. Basically, you first expose all fields and then you explain each state of that checkbox. That's rather challenging. And from my perspective, I think it might be reasonable to apply a pattern we've recommended previously before with going with radio buttons in that case. It might shorten, then you can skip basically the when enabled, when disabled part and make it way more specific on every radio button and make the actual description just about the performance and the implications there.
Yeah,
I agree with
Thomas.
radio.
Sorry, Thomas, you have your hand up.
Thank you. So for my days in support on Drupal sites, things like this are enormously problematic in that just because it says could significantly decrease performance, people have a tendency to just make this kind of change and then not know how to find where it is. And the only symptom you can find is a slew of very slow database calls. And it can be frustratingly difficult to troubleshoot why a site is slow. So my primary concern is that this is off in the middle of nowhere. And if I were to build a site and Aaron, you were to come and say, this site is super slow and Thomas is gone and he's not here to work on the site, I have no idea what Thomas did. That's killing my database calls. And this is highly effective for a certain class of website. It's very useful for websites that have a low number of users or where you can basically cache everything or you don't have an insane number of fields. But that's a pretty specific use case in which you can safely do this without blowing your site up. And so again, I'm not saying get rid of it. It's not an evaluation of if this is needed, but it's I'm not a fan of where this is or how difficult it would be to find something that could be potentially catastrophic for a site. Like if someone came in and flipped that on a production site because Aaron came in and I built the site knowing this couldn't be enabled and it got flipped on and then nobody knew what was happening, that worries me that something so impactful is essentially hidden in a configuration space that people aren't going to see. You're more likely to see it if it's at least visible from individual content pages. So even if we don't want to enable it from there because it changes the paradigm, we need to have some form of messaging that is visible elsewhere, either on your report page or on content pages, but there has to be something when a potentially significantly performance impacting decision has been made so that people can find it again. And I'll get off my soapbox.
Sorry, Scott, did you want to come back in?
Yeah, no, I was just agreeing with the radios might make it more obvious because then you have labels and descriptions.
Yeah,
And
sorry, go ahead.
I agree with the soapbox. Like it is the complexity of we want to add the function in. I know that also I know that you're using the navigation menu, but the content authoring menu navigation, is that part of core now where we have content authoring and text formats in this new little menu outside of navigation?
Yeah, it's Ralph, could you go up to the configuration screen? Oh, maybe use the breadcrumb to do it. Yeah, so this is what you see right now here. So content authoring you see there, so that has always been there. It's just the new navigation provides a different way of like navigating. So less people will see this page in the future with the new navigation scheme.
Yeah, I expect text formats to be someplace else in my head. That's what it's throwing out.
Yeah. And there is some work that has happened on rethinking the navigational structure, but no changes have yet come of that. Simo says in the chat, expose all fields as blocks in the layout builder UI as, I guess you're proposing it as the title, and then 2 radio buttons. First one to be on that's with the label for all entity types, and the second one per entity type specific setting. So this would be back on the thanks Ralph for copying that. Yeah, maybe if you go back to the layout builder settings, Ralph. Because yeah, there's two things here that people have mentioned there's one is we use restructure this to use radio buttons, which I fully support. And the other thing is a good thing about like making this easier to find. So something in the status report, or maybe I was thinking as well, like even a link, like a text and a link next to the button where you turn on the use of Layout Builder. And that could be a good place to indicate, hey, there is an additional setting, perhaps. Because I think, yeah, it's like if people aren't used to this page existing, this form, awareness, it's important to raise awareness that it's here.
Maybe even in both places. For one, on the content type or
yeah.
the entity type where you activated, and at the same time also in the status report with, in case the checkbox is checked here, set a warning maybe if a certain number of basically fields is available that is created, or a certain threshold of a number of field block plugins is reached.
Yep.
It might be an overkill, but it's one possibility would be to use the same kind of status message that we have been discussing about when some settings are overridden in settings.php. So so that kind of, it would be something that it would be using existing pattern, but it might be too much emphasis on that, but that's one option.
You mean 1 second? I have the link. That issue, there is no indication on configuration forms if there are overridden values.
Yeah, that was one we looked at
last week.
I think, Simo, are you saying like so having this as something you can turn on and configure in the settings file or somewhere that isn't in the user interface?
I was thinking that if we want to show this, show information that this checkbox for all entity types has been selected for all entity types, so that the checkbox on the entity specific form doesn't have effect, then it would kind of explain to the user that if you check this checkbox or uncheck it, it doesn't have effect because it's a kind of a global setting that's overriding it. So it's kind of so a user wouldn't wonder why he or she can't turn it off from the content type specific setting.
Right, because this is only a global level option, which is Scott noted earlier, is something that maybe could be configured per layout. And I know, and obviously it's worth noticing that I think Ralph, you mentioned it earlier that this issue has already been committed. So anything here that we recommend will be done in follow-up issues. Therefore, I think if we feel strongly about making the case to have this configured per entity type, then that's something where it could be a follow-up issue. I'm not sure technically how that would work, but as we have sometimes the luxury of this meetings, we don't necessarily worry about the technical details. Ralph, go ahead.
Just one thought about Simo's suggestion. I'm not sure if it would be appropriate to have some sort of info message or warning message, because it is not really the case like overriding, or that is overridden by that setting, but it's more of because in the end, the effect to the user, what basically fields are available and shown, is more, in most cases, the same. It's more of under the hood in regards of performance. So I'm not sure if having that kind of admin message would be the right thing. I'm more drawn to the suggestion of Thomas's, like some sort of line or status next to the activate the layout builder setting and or the setting on the status report, including maybe a threshold, something like that, is probably the less invasive and less visually striking one.
Yep. Okay, so we are getting close to halfway through the meeting, so it might be good to start. Well, I guess we'd be bike sharing here, but start to come up with some recommendations if there aren't any other clarifying questions. And we've already got a couple of good suggestions there in the form of that might be quite easy to get out in the form of adding a status report message if this is enabled, and also potentially a link below the use layout builder option on content types. So I'll just do a quick thumbs up actually. So who would be in favor of a status report message when this is enabled? Just give it like a thumbs up in Zoom. Okay, Simo, Ralph, Thomas. Okay, cool. And similarly, if we had like on next, I guess below the use layout builder checkbox on the manage display. In fact, maybe Ralph, if you could quickly jump over to like a manage display, we can just so we can see that. Yeah, so like I'm guessing we were talking about on this page where we've got use layout builder. Do people feel that some kind of something here, like a link below the use layout builder or some information there might be useful? Feel free to also comment on that idea.
Yes, because then people know where they can go to.
Yeah.
So basically on the managed display, more or less as a direction or wayfinder to the actual setting and the status report for the actual warnings.
Yeah, because I think this kind of builds on certainly what Thomas was saying, where like if you have this on and you don't know why the site is slow, like how Thomas put it, was like you know raising awareness of the fact that this is you can go here. I guess I'm thinking as well, like if we have a status report message, do we need something here that you know takes you to that, also takes you to those settings? Yeah, Thomas.
It might be extraneous. However, contextually, it would make sense. It doesn't. I think they would serve different purposes. Here, making it visible helps people who are enabling Layout Builder know that the option is available. And so I think adding it here is about making the option visible, which is helpful, but slightly different than the concerns I had, which putting it onto the status page would help alleviate. Though I would also add that it should drop some message into or some warning into the log when you enable it. Because that way, if someone's searching their logs, they could see a warning in the log as well.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Scott?
Logs aren't persistent though, so that's not going to really be useful.
It's not persistent, but it's still a record of the action being taken, whereas the status page doesn't show you when something was enabled, and both pieces can be important when troubleshooting, so that I know that, oh, Thomas is the one who enabled this because I was the one making changes at such and such a time. That's different than what the status page does. The status page is about addressing in real time that there's a problem, whereas the warning that gets dropped into the log is about recording when a system impactful action has been taken.
I understand.
Yeah, and I believe we do add log messages for things like when entities are deleted.
Yeah, it
I
does.
believe that's the case. Yeah.
Lots of things, but that's always the problem is, again, like Watchdog, if most sites are trimmed at 10,000 lines, then if you have a site with a lot of errors, that's going to get trimmed out before you even know it anyway.
Right.
Yeah, but a lot of places roll their logs. And so really that just becomes an administrative question.
But then those same companies would have like configuration set up in their website. They'd know that somebody changed a configuration. They may not know who to blame, but they know what configuration has been changed. It would get reset with a config reset.
All I know is more information is typically better, and storing it in the logs is better than not having it anywhere.
Ralph?
But you mean adding log messages for when the layout builder is the use layout builder option checkbox is activated, but wouldn't it be
Not for use layout. I was talking about when you have all the expose all fields.
that's okay. That's
Yeah.
that functionally. Okay, then I agree. Okay. So
Okay. That's something, I mean, that's not like, obviously, to be clear, that's not, I wouldn't say that's, necessarily strictly a usability thing, but I think if we're opening a follow-up issue, that's certainly something that we could put in as a recommendation, that it was, the group felt that was a useful thing. So yeah, just to go back, sorry, Ralph, your hand's still up. Did you have another thing you want to say?
no, sorry.
Okay.
It's hard to lower the hand
Sure.
with sharing at the same time.
Okay, so does sound like we have good consensus on adding a status report message, and potentially also, some kind of log message when this is enabled. That could be an option. And Ralph, could you just flick back to the manage display screen in a second?
Yep.
Just if with that use layout builder option, I was in my head, I was thinking you could have like something that points people to there being like additional settings. But again, I don't know if that is something where it would be excessive or necessary if the log message, the status report is enough to indicate that that option is turned on. Or if it's worth raising awareness of the fact that there is now these additional settings that didn't previously exist. Just throwing that open for anyone who's got any thoughts on that. Okay, I guess no one has any particular thoughts on that. So how about we go back to the configuration form, and yeah, Ralph's saying in the chat it might make sense for a way to find, but the stage 4 is more important. Yeah, okay. So I think the other thing obviously we want to figure out here, and we could probably use a bit of time to do that, is probably I was hoping we would get the easy bits out of the way first. This is probably the most challenging bit, is figuring out how should these radio buttons or how should this be restructured into radio buttons, because the thing I think is challenging here is understanding and communicating what the difference is between when this is turned on and turned off, because even for me the text here is I'm still a little bit, if I was reading it the first time, I think I understand it now after Ralph demoed it, but I think for me reading it the first time would I might still not be clear on what the different options actually do. But I liked I think it was it Simo's suggestion as a starting point. I think we could probably try to work with that and see. Would it be expose? Thomas, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I find the entire form page really odd because it feels like a massive waste of space. Just kind of, you're looking at this single checkbox in the middle of a page, and it just feels, it just feels like it's, and I don't know if we do this in a lot of other places. Like, I don't recall a bunch of places where you have a single checkbox in the middle of a form and that's all that exists.
Well, there is an example of the role settings screen that has
Here.
a single option.
Okay.
That was something we did advocate for, and I think it was on the basis that the account settings screen was not the right place for role settings. And I don't know. I understand your point. I'm trying to think where else could we put this, because there aren't really another place for global layout builder settings.
Right. No, and just like the media library settings, and it makes sense. It just, I'm thinking of it again from why I brought up the logging message earlier is part of usability to me is findability.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think of each page as an additional node in an information network, or sort of like a web page, and it's the more you spread the information out, the more challenging you make it for an administrator to find these things or to know they even exist. And so it's a usability issue, because you want to make certain that people know that an option exists, and simply having, if it was a top level menu item, then they would know it exists. But the moment you've put it a couple of levels down, you have to know, go to configuration, go to content authoring, then go to layout builder, and there's going to be something specific, and nothing else useful is on this page but the ability to expose all fields. And that's the concern. I don't have a solution for it, but that's how the perspective I'm taking as we have this discussion about what information should be here, what should be elsewhere. And when I hear things like, well, should it be in this place or that place, that's about trying to address the findability. And I don't know if we are solving a symptom rather than trying to come up with a cure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to find it, but there was an issue that I think I proposed a while ago in the ideas queue to make it easier to deep link between parts of the admin UI, so that if that was ever done, the soft case there was like, if you're deep in the field UI and there's some setting somewhere else, like this is a good example of that. It would be a standard way to go to that. So if that ever gets done, that would certainly help with what you're describing there, because I know that is a tricky problem.
And looking at this, my question becomes, why is Layout Builder its own page rather than something that's on a content authoring configuration page? Like, I don't understand why we wouldn't bubble these things up to a more consolidated page for configurations.
Ralph, go ahead.
I think at this point, it's just a single setting, but there's discussions to extend the functionality of Layout Builder, like with something like Layout Builder Plus at the moment, the contrib module, and then more settings in the context of Layout Builder would go in. But at this point, I'm not even sure if I would file it under content authoring, because, okay, it's about exposing fields, but on the other hand, it's more about performance and the underlying behavior, how things are handled. And so maybe I would even put it under something like development or system, because it's performance related. But yeah, I'm not sure.
But then, as you said, if there's more things coming in here, then does that make sense? Scott, you have your hand up. Please come in.
I think it's this. I agree. putting it in development then makes it a developer setting, and then people know that they shouldn't mess with the setting, right? Other users, if I'm not a developer, they wouldn't hopefully have access to the developer menu. I know that permissions don't actually do that. But that would clarify that the setting is a performance setting, right? That's the direction. Whereas then putting it back on the entity type clarifies that, one, you're doing it on the entity, you're doing it per entity. That way, if different entities need to be handled differently, like this is literally on our website right now, we're doing, bios, and we need the author bio on it. So on one content type, we need the user field. So that, that basically breaks our project.
Right. So because you
Or
did
using
raise
multiple layouts on one node, like if every node is allowed a different layout, some nodes you may want a user field, some you may not. Like, your use cases are huge, right? But
yeah, so there's a couple of things there. Like there's that idea of, could this be an entity level setting, in which case it doesn't need to live in configuration at all. So it lives near or next to the use layout builder setting that's turned on for an individual bundle. Or potentially, as you said, it could live on if we think this is more of a performance thing, there is the performance settings page under development, and that might be a more appropriate home for this. So there's potentially, so there's potentially two options there. And we could say that those are also things that need to be considered, because there is, there's obviously implications there in terms of the development effort. But yeah, okay, so that could be some additional things that we recommend. I do want to come back to the specific form elements, the form element, because I think it is important that we provide some direction on the radio button option. I see actually Scott has put in the chat that you still think the info about it for performance is not needed. For this reason, too much info for any user to understand. And is that in the, oh, that's the third line. Yeah, I guess if it was moved to the performance page, then you kind of already are in that headspace of thinking these are performance settings. So certainly that could be a indicator that this should live under performance. Ralph, go ahead.
I'm not 100% sure that I agree, but sort of I do. And as a corresponding thought, by adding to the status reports page and some sort of threshold there, if you get then over a certain threshold and get the exclamation mark, hey, you may have a performance impact here due to your setting on that at the moment layout builder page, that might make the note about the performance unnecessary. But
yeah. I think the good thing though is, because what we can do is, because we'll be creating follow-up issues, we can bring each issue back for more specific consideration. So we don't have to answer everything here, and we obviously we might not get to the bottom of everything, but at least we have some guidelines about, these are the kinds of things that we're recommending, and we can create issues around those recommendations, and then bring each one up at meetings. But yeah, we are actually about 46 minutes in, so we don't have much time left. But it would be, as I said, it'd be good to see if we can make some progress on the radio button option here, even if, like I said, we put this in a specific issue, and then we bring that issue up at a future meeting for consideration. I guess one thing it comes to mind based on Simo's suggestion, which Alpha's got on the screen here, is would we need to say expose all fields? We could say like just expose fields as blocks. Expose fields as block. We probably don't need to say, if this is on the layout builder settings page, probably don't need to say layout builder UI. Yeah. So yeah, it could just be like expose fields as blocks. Or
Or
I guess you keep in layer builder. Like I guess yeah, I suppose it depends. Is the setting staying here or is it getting moved? Would be the question. Because then you would want to, if this lives on the performance page, you probably want to emphasize that this is for layer builder. But if it's on the layer builder settings page, then
yeah, true.
for the second one there, yeah, that you're editing, I'm wondering. So for entity type, types having labeled or active. Yeah, I guess it would be for bundles because it is per bundle. So I guess instead of entity types there, we should say bundles.
But that's one thing I struggle with the most, and that for me it was really the point about linguistic insecurity. That is a field, all that entities, bundles. I was uncertain if I'm picking the right term for the right context, and just asking about that functionality, if I understood everything correctly. I was always insecure if I used the right thing. And the term bundle, I'm not sure if it is used that often in the UI.
Yeah, we don't tend
And
to.
if you, for example, look under help
It's
for
view mode.
bundle, a view mode?
Yeah.
No, I meant if you search for bundle, and if you have any entry there and there is no result, even that is
Yeah,
the point
because we
I try
usually
to make.
say we usually talk about in terms of like content types,
Yeah.
media types. Those are all bundles in themselves. So yeah, and obviously some of you are involved in the Drupalisms work, and we are keen not to introduce even more confusion. So I mean, entity types is probably fine because like technically, like a lot of these fields for user, it's the whole entity type, or yeah.
Yeah, but even an entity type is the overall thing, but an content type is basically a bundle, a node bundle. But
Yeah.
it's tricky, and it's not just about content types here. And I think using entity type, and also communicating the point I've demonstrated with the article and the basic page example, that if you're editing a layout for article, then even if you have exposed all fields as blocks to layout builder active, then you still don't see the fields for basic page. And that has to be reflected somehow in the description as well. Yeah, it's not trivial.
Yeah, so user fields are a related field, right? So we're exposing other related field information to the content we're currently handling.
Yeah. Your voice is currently distorted, Aaron.
Sometimes that happens. I will switch to my laptop microphone. My headset is a wireless headset, and the joys of Bluetooth. So yeah, I think like maybe the second option for entity types with layout builder enabled.
Oops, builder.
Oh, I think Quinn just suggested the same thing in the chat. I'll give Quinn and I can share credit for that one then. So we are getting close to the end of the meeting. How do people feel about this latest version? And obviously, like I said, we don't have to get to a final conclusion here. We can continue to iterate on this in Slack and on the issue and bring it up at future meetings. But does this feel like an improvement to people in terms of where we started? Thumbs up from Simo. Thomas as well. And Scott, you have your hand up? Oh, and Scott and Quinn both give thumbs up. Oh, was that just us? Was that just meant to be a thumbs up? Yeah. So I think we have made some good progress here because we've been able to provide some direction in terms of the follow-up issues that can be created, and also got some good progress in terms of the how this could change. Ralph, I'm assuming you've been taking some notes there. Is that right? Or are you going to review? Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So we'll get the follow-up issues created, and please do join us in Slack to continue the conversation, because I'm sure we will continue in the UX channel in Slack and also on the issues. Is there anything just before we close out? We do have a few minutes left. So is there anything anybody wants to mention before we close out? Or
just one question in regards of the approach. Lee already mentioned on the issue that a follow-up issue should be created. I think it might, since those are several different interventions, basically, to write everything up in a single issue and file it as basically, in air quotes, meta issue, and then different follow-up child issues could be created from that.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea, because we have, for instance, we've recommended a couple of things around this could be on the entity type, or it could live under performance, and of course that could impact how the setting ends up being, what wording is used, right? So I think it makes sense to just bring everything together into a single comment. That will, of course, help us just referencing it for the usability issue, the meeting issue. So yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Okay, and I think as I said, we're hitting up against the hour. We do, I believe, on Monday is the next Drupalisms meeting. That's correct. Yep. For those of us who are participating in that. And yeah, I will see some of us on Monday. If not, look forward to seeing everybody at next week's meeting. And you might have me again, because I think Benji is off, unless anybody's particularly keen to volunteer to moderate, because I'm probably going to have to head away right sharp, or in fact I might not even be able to do it next week. So we'll see. We'll figure it out in Slack. Benji is at NetCamp. Perfect. Okay, we'll figure it out in Slack then. Okay, thank you everybody for coming today and for your input. And yeah, please do come back next week, assuming next week's meeting goes ahead. So
Thanks so much, Aaron. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks,
Thanks.
Alan.
Bye.
Thanks, Tom.
Nice weekend.
thanks. You too.